So I'm really delighted today to welcome Aedamar Comiskey to the Women's Room Legal Division. She's very kindly taken time out of her busy schedule as senior partner of Magic Circle firm Linklaters to talk to me about her life and career and advice that she would pass on to others. So we'll dig into Aedamar's life and career in more detail in just a moment, but to give you some headlines. Aedamar was elected to senior partner of Linklaters in May 2021. Something that I heard about with great excitement and glee, as she was the very first female senior partner to be elected in the firm's long and distinguished 183-year history. So that's a long time without a woman at the helm. And previously before that, as well as running a really busy M&A practice, Aedamar was global head of corporate, responsible for managing the firm's very extensive corporate practice around the world. And she also sat on the firm's executive committee for 5 years. So Aedamar, welcome. It's a really amazing career. It really is. So diving straight in, I'd just be really interested to know if there are any things in particular that you credit your achievements to. Like it might be early life experiences. We just talked about your pivotal moments that happened in your career, or even like great advice that you've been given. So when people say, how did you get to where you are? What do you tend to say to them in return?
It's a very good question, Erica. I honestly didn't have a plan. Some people said, did you always want to be the senior partner of Linklaters? And the honest answer to that is I hadn't really given it much thought until 2015, when the senior partner election was about to start. And some colleagues said to me, Aedamar, you should think about running. And I honestly thought that was very funny at the time, because I said, well, why would I do that? I don't know what I'd say if I was a senior partner of Linklaters. And it was funny because I guess in thinking about that, I thought maybe I'll write a manifesto. And if I agree with my own manifesto, maybe I'll run. And that's how I came to run the first time I ran. And I didn't succeed. Charlie Jacobs, who is a fantastic senior partner, he succeeded that time round. And maybe that's why I ran again in 2021, because I hadn't made it the previous time. And I thought, well, I'll give it another go. And part of the reason I ran the first time was because I was a bit afraid to do it, but I thought that's not a reason not to do something. That's not a reason not to give something a go. And that was actually a very good thing for me anyway, to realize, because I think that is, if you can work out, well, why do I not want to do this? And if whatever it is, and if you don't agree with your own reason for not wanting to give it a go, then it's what you're to give it a go. So that was a good learning moment for me. And actually, the good thing about it was although I didn't succeed the first time, it was a very good experience, and I learned a huge amount from it.
Amazing, yeah, and that's obviously amazing advice for other people. I mean, particularly that, like pushing yourself over the edge, like when you're scared. Is that something that you've done, earlier on in life? Had you practiced that before, feeling a bit scared about doing something and then analyzing it and taking it forward?
Yeah, I guess maybe a little bit. And maybe, in a funny way, it might be go right back to when I was much younger. And, when you are one of the younger siblings in a big family, sometimes you have to put yourself out of your comfort zone on a regular basis, just to keep up with what your siblings are doing or whatever it is. And maybe I'd sort of learned along the way that, the worst thing that can happen is, you don't get what you want, but your life goes on and you keep going. So maybe a little bit, I guess I have a bit of I would try and give, from a mindset point of view, I always try to say, well, what's the worst that could happen? I won't be any worse off than if I didn't give it a go. So I may as well give it a go.
Okay. I love that because I actually talk to people quite a lot about that when I'm getting them to think about reframing, like what they're saying to themselves in their head about things like public speaking or like asking for a pay rise. I'm like, let's talk about what's the worst, or business development. Actually, it's like, what's the worst that's happened? Because often there's like this sort of black abyss of something horrible we think might happen. But when you actually analyze it, the worst that can happen, really isn't that bad.
No, I mean, the worst that could happen is you're no worse off than if you didn't try. So you do the risk analysis, you think, well, I might get something and I'm no worse off than if I don't try at all. So I may as well.
Yeah. And did you, because although you weren't Although it wasn't like this is everything I've ever wanted to do and I'm going to stand and then not get elected. You still, so although it wasn't like that, it wasn't like this is my passion, this is what I really want to do at that stage. You obviously still had to write your manifesto, put yourself out there, go through the whole, I presume there were hustings and things. Was it hard to handle the disappointment? What was it like when Charlie got in and you didn't? Was that difficult to handle or was it easy?
No, it was. I mean, it was difficult for a couple of days because, if you go on in for anything and you put a lot of effort into it, and if you go for something, you shouldn't give it your best shot because you'll want to feel you did your best. And when you put a lot of effort into something, I think it's very natural then, even if you kind of knew it was a long shot, I think you still feel a bit disappointed when it doesn't come good because you've tried so hard. But I think so that I was a little bit, it's a bit of a natural feeling. You feel a bit rejected. But I was able to rationalize it in my own mind very quickly, to be honest, because I knew it was a long shot. So, and I'd wanted to run, Erica, because I felt that it was important that women run for these roles. I thought, well, why not? So I was glad that I'd run, and I was disappointed initially, but I got over it pretty quickly. Yeah. And a lot of people had said to me actually before I ran, you need to be all right if you don't get it, and I said, yeah, no, I agree with that. And then, I kept saying to myself, well, I said I would be all right if I didn't get it. So now I need to be all right if I didn't get it, if I don't get it. So, I was fine.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've got your own internal coach there, which is fantastic. On the subject of which, have you ever had coaching? Have you ever had someone coaching you through these sorts of things?
Yes, no, I'm a big fan of coaching because I think we all need help all the time. I think it's very important, and I think being able to talk to people and feel comfortable knowing that you can, be very open about what you're worried about or what you feel bad about or what you feel you're doing badly, and I think it's really important to be able to talk it through with people. So I think coaching is, I really do think it's very helpful for no matter how senior or experienced anybody is. I think that we can all benefit a lot from coaching.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I've just been sort of starting to advise people. I haven't actually tested this out myself, and I probably should do, but one of the reasons I set up this podcast was so that people who don't get given one-to-one coaching through their firms, or, it's not a cheap, it's not a cheap thing to undertake. But there's an awful lot of life coaching out there that actually is quite reasonable. And I think, I always say the biggest thing about coaching is getting away from the emails and the meetings into a room with someone who doesn't have an agenda and hearing yourself talk out loud. And to be honest, you can get that through some quite reasonable life coaching nowadays. So although I haven't tried a life coach myself, I should test out one of these platforms. That I think that's another way for people to be able to access coaching. Obviously they can email me, they can watch the videos, listen to the podcast, but that might be another way for people to access it. Just going right back. So did you always want to be a lawyer? Was it something you knew you wanted to do?
No, I didn't, Erica. I mean, I didn't really have I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I left school. I went to school in Ireland, and I was at a school where they tended to encourage you to do medicine if you got good grades. And actually, two of my siblings are doctors, and probably because that's what they were told by the career guidance. And I spent so I put medicine down as my first choice on Ireland's equivalent of the UCAS form, and I went to stay with my sisters who were junior doctors in Dublin that summer, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm not sure I want to be a doctor at all. They work far too hard. They work really late at night, and who'd want to do that? I mean, that's crazy. I'm not going to be a doctor. And I remember ringing my father the next morning to say, Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. And he said, that's fine. You know, you don't have to be a doctor. And I said, yeah, but I put medicine down as my first choice on my UCAS form. And he said, well, you know, you can change it. And I said, yes, I suppose I can change it. But I'm going to need to change it. You know, I think the deadline is tomorrow. So I'll need to change it today.
Mm-hmm.
And fine, well, change it today. I love that's grand. And I said, well, what'll I put? And I said, oh, just put whatever you want. And I said, well, that's not very helpful, Dad. You know, you're supposed to be the grown-up. You're supposed to be giving me some good advice. And I remember he said, it doesn't matter what degree you do. It's just a discipline. It's not going to determine what you do for the rest of your life. Do something you think you might like. And you know, I look back on that advice. At the time, I thought, oh, God, that's really not that helpful, Dad. But looking back on it now, that's a very, very accurate thing to say, I think. It's quite visionary thing for him to say back all those years ago. But I was still left with having to decide what I was going to put on my UCAS form. So I thought, well, you know, what does any self-respecting person who needs to make a decision do? They go to a fortune teller. So I took myself over to a fortune teller, and she told me I should be a lawyer. And I thought,
really? Wow.
And I thought, well, why not? It's as good a thing as any. I like LA law.
Is that what you then studied? Did you put law down on the UCAS form? Wow. Yeah. What did she tell you anything else that came true or that didn't come true?
She told me I was going to have a son who would be a very famous concert pianist. There is no sign of that. I have 3 boys. None of them play the piano. So I think that was not right, but she was right. So she was right that I ended up being a lawyer, but that's, so there's, you know, it's not like I had always wanted to be a lawyer. It was kind of quite.
Well, there we are. That could be an alternative. Like, forget the coach, just go to a fortune teller because it's clearly worked very well for you. So maybe that's what people should be doing. Something more interesting. Amazing. And do you have any regrets about, like, do you look back and think, oh, actually, I wish I'd studied something else, or I wish I'd become a doctor?
No, I definitely. I'm glad I didn't become a doctor. I don't think that would have been. You know, I honestly don't think I'd have been a very good doctor. I did enjoy. I loved university. I mean, in Ireland, I did a law degree in University College Dublin, and actually, the amount of lectures and tutorials were quite a small number compared to some other courses. So I had a great time, and I did enjoy it. I mean, I slightly think now I would have loved to have done economics or something more more business as well. Yeah. But actually, you know, you can pick up a lot of that even as a lawyer. And I did mergers and acquisitions lawyer for many, many years. You pick up a lot actually about business doing that. But that I guess I'm interested in that side of things now. So I kind of think, you know, had there been law and economics or something like that combined in my university, I'd have probably been quite keen to mix the law degree with the business degree as well.
Yeah, that would be a really great option. But I mean, I think most of us don't realize, I mean, I certainly didn't realize that I was going to enjoy the commercial and economic side of things. I think maybe nowadays people are a bit more savvy, but it took me a while to realize that's what I was really interested in. And just in terms of other things, so parts of your career or even your life where you either you used coaching and it was really helpful, or where you look back now and think, actually, maybe at that point, having a coach would have been really useful. I guess it's sort of challenging moments. You know, what did you do? How did you deal with them? Have you got some examples of those?
Yeah, I think a coach, you know, a bit like you said, Erica, I think a big advantage of taking time out to talk to a coach is that you give yourself a bit of headspace to actually sit back and try and think things through, or try to work out what is it that's bothering me, or what is it that I don't feel, you know, I'm getting right. And I think I think sometimes just taking the time and giving yourself a little bit of time to do that is key, because I think a lot of the time we're all kind of, you know, we're all on the treadmill running and just trying to get from pillar to post and thinking, I just need to get this done and then it'll be fine. But we never really step back to think, no, hold on a minute. What is it that's, you know, what is it that I is really, maybe there's something maybe bothering you, or just, it can sometimes be, you're not even sure yourself what it is. And I think that's where sometimes trying to take a bit of time out. And a time that I remember was just really helpful. I mean, you have to find somebody that you can really talk to, that you have to get that sort of rapport, I suppose. But I remember once, it was when the boys now are 21, 18 and 15, but when they were young, I think they would have been about 7, 4 and 1. And, they were very young, and I was busy at work, and I was really struggling because I was feeling that I'm not doing anything well. I remember saying, to the coach, I used to feel good because I used to think I was able to do things about at 90% level. And now I think I'm doing everything at about 60%. I'm 60% at work, and I'm 60% as a mother, and I'm 60% about anything in my personal life. And everything is, I feel very, it's just dispiriting because I don't feel I'm good at anything anymore. And I remember her saying, well, are you doing your best? And I thought about that for a minute, and I said, absolutely. I'm definitely doing my best because I have nothing left in the tank to give to any of these things to do them better. And she said, well, then, cut yourself some slack because you can't do any better than your best. And actually, it was just a really good thing to say to me at that moment, because I thought, oh, okay, that is actually correct. I can't do it better than my best. So there's no point in beating myself up that it's funny then, because actually I just need to say, I'm doing my best. So there you go, I'm doing my best. And it was good for me. It helped me a lot at the time, because I thought, okay, I'm not going to make myself feel bad anymore that, it's not better, because actually it's my best, and therefore there's no point really in worrying about it. I'm not going to be able to do any better than this right now. And so that was just, it's simple, but it was very helpful to me, and I kind of calmed down about it and sort of just thought, okay, that's fine, I'm doing my best.
I love that, because that comes up a lot. I mean, obviously, particularly with women, it comes up a lot. I don't feel like I'm doing anything else well. And just the practicality of looking at it like, well, are you doing your best? Could you do anything different? Like, is there, are you really doing everything you can? Yes. So then you can't do anything different other than give up. And if you're not going to give up, then stop winding yourself up about how you're not doing a good enough job. So that is an amazing piece of advice. And it does, it comes up a lot with women that I talk to who are running, families and a busy careers. So that really is worth emphasizing that to everyone who is listening. I mean, on that, I almost don't like asking women with families about like how they managed, but I guess it is something that comes up a lot. And I know that it's really useful to people, to other women, to understand how many different approaches there are and how many different personalities there are, both having family and doing a really high pressure role. And I just wondered, like, how did you do it? How did you manage to combine the two? And do you have like tips? Do you have top tips that you tell people?
I think I think the one thing that I would be very open about, Erica, is that there are times when it sometimes it's really, it's very hard at times, and I think that's important to just be very honest about that, because I think sometimes, and I'm sure lots of people are good at looking as if everything is very normal, but often it's very, very difficult for them. And I think it's, I think it's really important to feel able to talk about things, because the thing I think that puts a lot of stress on all of us is if we think that we're the only people that are struggling, we're the only people that are finding it hard. And it applies to so many things, that you kind of thinking, God, I'm finding this really difficult. And you look around, you think everybody else looks like they're coping really well. It's just me that's finding it difficult. And I think often when people will speak about it openly, everybody said, no, I'm finding it really difficult too. And so then you feel so much kind of comforted if you think it's not just me that's finding this hard, And then if I think it's really important people support each other a bit as well, and are very, open about the things that they're struggling with. And I think having colleagues at work that will cover for you at times and you will cover for them, I think is really important, because there are things that you really, if you're not there for certain family events or family occasions, you feel really bad about it. You need to be there for those. I look back on I left my mum's 80th birthday early because of work, and I always regretted that, because our family were together, and I always look back and think I shouldn't have done that. And I think that's why it is important for people to help each other out and to help cover for each other. And then, we all can, there'll be times when I need to be away or somebody else can cover, and then I cover for them. And that to me is really important, because that sort of a support network around you makes it just more bearable, although it's still at times very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing that, because I think it's interesting. I gave the headlines of your career, and it is incredibly impressive. But behind that, there's a lot of toil that goes into it. It's not as easy as it seems on the surface. People often say to me when I talk about my CV, they're like, "Oh, that's really impressive." And I'm like, well, number one, I'm quite old, so I've had a long time to gather up all these things. And it just isn't, when you go underneath, there's something very different to what you see on the surface. So you sharing that, I think, and making people realize they're really not alone is incredibly helpful. So thank you for being so open. And is there anything you do in terms of building resilience? Do you do exercise? Do you meditate? Do you eat really healthy? And are you like, I have to do this in order to maintain my resilience? Do you do anything?
I actually feel much better when I do some exercise. I've noticed that, sometimes I do try to, exercise a couple of times a week. And I notice that when I don't, Erica, I feel much worse. I have less energy. I feel a bit more down in the dumps about things. Things bother me more. So I've realized that for me anyway, I can cope much better when I get a bit of exercise. People talk about it, the endorphins that it releases. I definitely think I notice I have more energy when I get a bit of exercise. I do tend to eat quite healthily, but and during, I'm not a good sleeper, which I think is a real problem. Actually, I do think I think if you can sleep well, that is a great thing. And I'm not a good sleeper, and I don't think that's good at all. Actually, I wish I wish I slept better, because I think when you do get a good night's sleep, it's amazing. It's amazing how better things can look in the morning than they do the night before if you can get a good night's sleep. And so it's obviously it does help heal the body, but I'm not a good sleeper, which is, I'm always trying to read books on sleeping better. And I might sleep better.
I don't know whether the apps will work, like all the things that track. I have an Aura ring now, and I'm like trying to do the get up the same time every day. Now I've been told I have to go to bed at the same time as well. It is, yes, and then something happens that throws you off, so you can't do that. So, but I agree with you. I mean, it looks like increasingly everything comes down to sleep now, is what they're saying. And obviously it's something in the 80s, we were sort of like, sleep is for wimps type thing. So I guess it's good that's changed. I just, in terms of like, obviously we want to stop referring to people as female CEO, female senior partner. But I mean, you were at that in 2021. It was really at that, it was sort of that generational shift where it was the first female partners of the big law firms that were coming through. I mean, did it mean something to you? Was it different? Because did you think, oh, I'm the first female partner? Or were you just like, I'm getting on with it, it doesn't matter, and the press just ran away with it? Did it feel different because you were the first woman to be senior partner in 183 years or whatever it was?
I mean, I was delighted that, I was delighted that there was a woman in the senior partner position. Obviously, I was delighted to be that woman. But I think it does. Yeah, I think it is really important, Erica, that there are women in the most senior positions in law firms and in all businesses, because I think that people coming through as younger women in the business need to sort of see role models, and there's, and I think it's good if they can see people at the most senior level who are women, because then I think they will think, well, this is obviously a place where I can aspire to do that as well. And I'm a big believer in the benefit of diversity of all sorts in business and generally in the world, to be honest, because I think, whether it's gender or race or LGBTQ plus or social mobility, I just think having people who have a different perspectives on things, different experiences, different views on things, it's just so helpful. If you're trying to solve complex issues, having people who can bring a different perspective is generally far better than everybody thinking the same way. And so for me, it makes the workplace, I think we're more likely to be good at our job. I also think it's more likely to be enjoyable for everybody if you have more diversity. And so, I'm delighted to be in the position of being senior partner, because you're very privileged in this position. You have the ability to bring some new ideas and to suggest things that we can do to change things. And so I think I'm very privileged to be in the position, and I want to make sure that I use my time in the position to make sure that we are bringing positive change and good change to things.
Yeah. I think it does really make a difference being able to look up and see people who look like you, who are doing what you did. I mean, I'm in fact, someone who's now my coach supervisor was a partner at Linklaters, interestingly, and she was with me at A&O, above me, like 2 years or so above me. And so I'd watched her career, I knew her a bit. And then one day my husband came home and said, oh, she's resigned. She's going off to do something different. And I can still remember where I was in the car. I remember thinking, does that mean that I can't do this? Like, she's stopped doing it. Has she stopped doing it because she can't do it? Maybe I can't do it. And it was so interesting. I can literally remember where I was in the car when that happened, because I suddenly questioned, does that mean I can't do it? So seeing people there who have, who look like you and who, have a similar background makes a huge, huge difference, I think. Yeah. And this, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, and I suppose linked to that, I think the benefit of having people who have just different experiences and will have done different things is that, going back to what we were talking about earlier, when people are finding things difficult, you need to have a variety of people that you can talk to about it, so that you're not just hearing one thing that works for somebody. We all benefit from talking to different people and thinking, oh, okay, that's interesting, that works for you. And oh, that's something completely different. And that, to your point, Erica, it makes us all think, oh, well, maybe that'll work for me. But you need to you need to hear different perspectives on it, because what works for one person won't work for another. But if you have the opportunity to ask lots of different people about, well, how are you doing this? Then you're much more likely to find something that resonates for you, and that's why I think it's so important to have a good variety of people.
Absolutely. And then one thing I am interested in is, like, in law firms, we don't get a lot of training, like business training. We get business training as in we get to learn about businesses, like you said, because we're advising clients who are running businesses. But in terms of, first of all, that step up from being an associate into being a partner, but then also that step into being management of a law firm where you are running a huge business. I just wondered, like, have you got advice about how people prepare for those transitions? Like, how do they become more like a business person, more commercially savvy?
It's a really good point. I think law firms it's very interesting in the sense that you take somebody who's a good lawyer and you think that they're going to be a good manager of a big business. And there's, actually that's interesting, because you wouldn't take a dentist and think they could be a doctor. So, I do think it's a really important point that there need, it's a very different role, and it's a role for which you need some training and some help. And so, I've always been kind of keen to make sure that there is more training for people who take on different roles, because it is a very different thing. And just generally, I think in the law firm generally, there's often lots of technical training for us as lawyers.
Yeah.
But I think there should be lots of training around, people skills and business development and, the other things that make you good at your job, as well as just being good at the technical side of law, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important to be able to think about how can I improve on all the different parts of that, the package that will make me really good at what I do. And I think more training around that would both be very beneficial and very interesting for lawyers.
Yeah. Great. And then I have to ask you, you're in this position where you are at the top of management of a hugely influential firm. I mean, in terms of the future of the legal market, in terms of private practice and solicitors and the sort of city, what do you think? What skills are people going to need coming into the law? What do you think will change in like the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's a great question, Erica. I think people who have a very open mind about everything, actually, and are prepared to change what they're doing if they need to, because I think that, and I look back over the last couple of years with everything, both in the terms of the pandemic, but then geopolitics, technology. I mean, we're going to see, I suspect, a lot of change with our and I think it's going to be a really important time to have the mindset that change can bring better things, not change is bad. So I think that's going to be key, and I think there will be lots and lots of opportunities. I mean, I think artificial intelligence is going to be really interesting and could mean that, we have a lot more time to spend on the parts of the job that we probably would genuinely find more interesting anyway. And we can use technology to be to do some of the things that maybe we would have found less interesting much more efficiently than we would have done them.
Yeah.
So I think there's lots of benefits. And I think, for the legal profession, I think there'll be lots of opportunities, but I think people need to kind of want, just say, what, I'm going to be prepared to pivot or to do things differently or to look for different opportunities and I think, getting out there and talking to clients and listening to what people are saying and what people want, and then trying to be responsive to that. I think that's going to be really, really key. I mean, I think I think I think lawyers are lucky in terms of whether there's a very strong economy or not so strong in the economy, there's often legal work to do. And I think sometimes we take that a bit for granted. And I think actually we're quite lucky as a profession that way. But I think it's going to be a really interesting time, Erica. But I do think people with that sort of interest in being flexible and sort of seeing it as a learning opportunity rather than, I have to change what I'm doing. I think that's where people will get the most out of the time ahead, because I think it will. I think things are already, there's so much change, and it feels like it's just going to continue and actually speed up.
Yeah. So embrace the change, be flexible and open-minded, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and enjoy it. Kind of see the opportunity to learn and try and enjoy it instead of because it is easy. Also, it is easy to feel quite stressed by it. I think I worry quite a lot about things. So, but then I try to sort of say, well, it could be some great opportunities here as well.
Yeah, and the job. I mean, when I was a trainee, I was running around sort of putting bits of paper in envelopes and underlining things to show where the word had changed. That's what I spent most of my day doing. So that people don't do that anymore. So that's like that whole job sort of has disappeared. And yet we all adapted and we were still needed.
Yeah.
So things change, but roles change with them.
Yeah.
And then finally, like your 3 pieces of advice to your younger self, what would they be?
So I would say don't be afraid to do things, if because you learn a lot from them, and the worst thing that could happen is it doesn't work out, but you learn a lot. I do think you learn more from things not working out the way you wanted them to than if they work out the way you wanted them to. Because when it works out the way you wanted it to, you kind of just think, you don't necessarily analyze that because you think, well, that was what you expected. So you sort of just move on. It's when things don't work out the way you wanted them to that you've got a much better opportunity to think about that and to learn from it. So I think trying things and not being too, not kind of feeling bad if it doesn't work out, just see it as a learning opportunity. I think, that'd be the first thing, sort of give things a go. I think, and this is sort of linked to it, but I do think seizing opportunities, don't put things off. I used to sort of have this idea, well, it's not the right time. I'll wait until there's no right time. I mean, the one thing I've really realized is I used to say, well, it's not the right time, but then I began to realize there's never, for me anyway, there's never a right time. So just do it, because I am a procrastinator. But I've never yet decided the time is right. So I know that often it's not. So you just say, you know what, just dive in, just do it, give it a go. And then the other thing, ask for help. Help. I definitely at times didn't ask for. I sort of thought, I better not, because either people will expect that I'll know what I'm doing, or people will think I don't know what I'm doing if I ask for help, or people won't want to help me. I made all sorts of assumptions, and actually the truth is, usually when you ask people for help, they're really keen to help you. I mean, that's the thing that's genuinely quite affirming about things, that often when you ask for help, people go, sure. And you think, what? And so I now ask, because again, the worst thing that'll happen is people will say, I'm really sorry, I don't have time, or I can't, or I'm not able to do it. Don't know what, why are you asking me? But again, you're no worse off. Sorry, you asked me for 3, but I do have to say, don't make assumptions. That's the other thing I'm doing. Don't make assumptions. And I would say neither I should make assumptions, nor should anybody make assumptions about me or about you. I think there's a lot of well-meaning misassumptions made about people. That's probably not a word, but you know what I mean. Yeah. People think, well, make an assumption about you, and it's not right. And so it's much better. I think much better. Don't make assumptions. Just ask. Ask people. Just ask them, because it can really delay progress by making assumptions about people, and it can be quite unfair. And I say it's often well-meaning, but it's not right. And so I think it's really important that people don't make assumptions.
And can I just dive in? Like, how did you get over the asking for help and worrying about, well, no, is it going to look like I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm not good enough, and that because that I think does hold people back. Sometimes they have to pretend that they know exactly what they're doing. What advice?
It's definitely true, and it's probably something that maybe as you get older you realize that other people don't know what they're doing either. Again, I think certainly, at least for me anyway, when I was younger, I did make assumptions that everybody knew what they were doing. As I got older, I realized actually they don't.
Yeah.
And so maybe you get more comfortable saying, actually, I'm not following this, or maybe it's just me, but I don't follow that. I don't know what,
then you'll probably find that then they can't explain it to you either, because they couldn't follow it to you. So, yeah. Okay. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, look, thank you. That is all fantastic advice. And I just have to say thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. And it's been really lovely talking to you. So thank you very much.
Likewise. No, thank you very much, Erica. And lovely talking to you too.
Thank you.